Hello all, welcome to our last video on the Tic-Tac-Toe program. So in the last video we saw that we can actually make the game to decide a winner. So the game has ended. Now one thing you are noticing, it's always showing a fixed status that whoever is the first player, or right now the name is hard coded, basically it's my name and it says it wins. So you will have to accurately reflect the status whichever player wins. So few things we'll have to do for that is first also store the name of the players. So maybe you can change the constructor and start with string player 1 and then string player 2, and then you can maintain some internal variables to store them. I'll just here call it p1 because I don't want the variable names to be same. So you'll say player 1 is equal to p1, and if you recall, we also asked that you create a function that returns the name of the winning player. So based on the player that wins, you are either going to return the name of the player 1 or the p1 variable, or player 2 variable, which is equal to p2. Alright, and the way you decide the player is this: if it's a player 1 move and the game ends, so obviously player 1 made the move. If it was not a player 2 move, it was not a player 1 move, then you know player 2 1. So a single boolean variable, since tic-tac-toe can only have two players, can decide which player won. And here we are deciding the checkboard, right, to see if any player is won. So if the game ends in this state, you can mark the winning player. So you can actually even set up an internal variable winning player name. So at this point, if when we are returning true, we know that the game has ended, right? So we can set up the winning player name also. Or this will be better to call a function before we return, because we'll have to add this condition multiple times. Remember last time we discussed there are 8 ways in which you can win a game. So rather than repeating the code 8 times, it's better to call it in a function. Set winning player. So obviously it's red underlined because there is no function called set winning player. So let's create a private function on the top. One thing I like is to keep the private functions in the top and the public in the bottom. That's just a way of organizing things and finding things easier, but it will be good if you can do that, but not required. So what was the function name? So if player is player 1 move. So remember when we make the move, after that we change the player, right? Player 1 move. So you have to be a little cautious how you understand this variable. If player 1 move is equal to true, we set the board to 0, and then we reverse the player 1 move. So if player 1 move is true, which means previously player 2 had moved, so the winning player is player 2. Else and then you can write a function that returns the name of the winning player, and you simply return whatever is contained inside this variable. Now when you are running this game, you can, oops, we didn't run correctly. Oh yeah, we have to pass the name of the player, so I'll pass the name of the player here, player 1. This is hard coded by the way, but in your case, remember you have to take these, the variable names that you're passing have to be coming from the text boxes. So we go back to the text box 1. This is the first text box and the second text box. Make sure you pass these values here. So I'm just passing some hard-coded values, but you have to take the values from those text boxes. So when we press start game, and similarly the game continues, and you will display a message here. You can also pop up a message box when any of the player wins. Now one thing is there, we have this button here called start game, but we haven't implemented any code on it, right? So remember, only when you press the start game should you start the game, and should not allow users to check anything before. So the main board actually should be only be set, means you should instantiate only the class when somebody presses button start. And if somebody clicks on any of the cells, let's go to the definition here. If main board is allowed move, so what we can do here is if the main board is not even set, right? If main board is equal to null, so what we'll do, we'll initially in the constructor set main board to null, and main board is the name of the object that only gets assigned a value when you press the start game. So we can just add a message here when we are updating the board. Is equal to null, means null is the value that is assigned to an object initially. So if you are creating an object, instantiating it from a class, if the object does not have any value, it's going to have a value of null. So that's one good way of checking. And we'll simply show please start the game first. So as soon as you start the game, it will also draw the board again. So let's see this in action. So this will allow you the capability to play multiple games without closing the form and restarting it again. So previously you remembered, right? We have this is the start of the game, but if I press start game, everything gets cleaned out. So I do this and I say game has ended. Now if I click here, nothing is going to happen, right? But if I want to play a new game, I just press start game and the game starts again. So that is why this button is important. Otherwise you'll have to close the form and start the form back up again to play another game. But just by moving these two lines of code here, we have basically given that capability to play multiple times without closing the form. Now one thing we can do again is if the game ends, you can call this function again, or just act as if we are initializing the board. I'm creating the main board again and draw the board again. That is something that you can decide if you really want to do. So as soon as the game ends, you can automatically clean it up. So for example, start game, game ended, and then you can automatically go into a new game. But again, there are some options you can try, and these are not required. Alright, so in this series of videos, you have got a very good picture on how to write a tic-tac-toe application. We have seen how we declare the form, how we add picture boxes to it, and even how to draw images and add to the picture box. And then how programmatically we can control the value that is displayed in the picture box, as well as we can go and maintain a data structure that just maintains the state of the game. So the real brains behind the game is actually this data structure, the main the board data structure, which is a 3 by 3 string array. This is where we maintain the state of the game, and if we want to change anything, we simply change that data structure and automatically all the visualization and all changes. So this is what is called as a separation of concern principle, and it's very valuable, especially if you're building complex programs. Now this program here is not very complex, so you can actually maintain the state of the game directly in the form, but again, that's not a good practice, and since we are learning C#, we need to implement good practices. Alright, I hope you enjoyed these videos, and good luck in building your tic-tac-toe game. Catch you later.